recording. Greetings, welcome to Transforming Assessment Series. This is a special event with the eAssessment Association for the eAssessment Awards, and today's panel chair, session chair, will be Martha Gibson. So Martha, would you like to do your bit, please?
Thank you, Matthew, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you very much for joining our session today. So I am going to introduce three panelists, three speakers, and we're going to have a look at case studies from the 2020 eAssessment Awards finalists. So before that, I want to give you a little introduction about the eAssessment Association and also the eAssessment Awards. So this is me. I'm the sponsorship secretary and I'm on the board of the eAssessment Association, and you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. So the eAssessment Association, we are a professional body, and we want to promote better assessment of knowledge, skills and capabilities of people through technology. And we represent the whole of the sector, so academics and institutions to technology providers and large corporates. Here are some stats for you. We have 1,833 individual members. It's a free subscription, and I'm hoping by the end of this session that number will go up to 2,000. I'll tell you how to register at the end of the session. We have 14 people on our board. We're all volunteers and we come from all over the sector. We have 20 sponsor organisations, and they are really valuable in supporting the work that we do. Twitter followers 2,326, and then we have a LinkedIn discussion group, 762 members. Again, please feel free to join those. I'll give you details of how you can join both of those social media. And what can we offer you? We have a podcast, there is an annual conference, events, papers, special interest groups, case studies, blogs, social media, and of course, the eAssessment Association Awards. That's the link if you want to have a look at our website, and I'll give you more information again at the end of the session. So a little bit about the awards. Our key goal, or one of our key goals as an association, is to communicate and capture the positive contributions that technology makes in all forms of assessment. And we really want to showcase the best practice in research and innovation that's taking place internationally and across all sectors. We're in the fourth year, I think, of the awards, and this year applications came from all over, so Canada, USA, Saudi Arabia, Scandinavia, UK and Ireland. There are 7 categories in the awards. And we haven't announced winners yet. That's why this is a finalist showcase, but winners are going to be announced online via our awards show next week and on Twitter. Normally we would announce winners at our gala dinner after the conference, but given the circumstances, it's going to be online. So please watch out for that. That will be next week. Each category is judged by a separate and independent judging panel. And I was one of the judges on one of the categories. So it was a real privilege to hear an awful lot of interesting projects that are going on. And the entire process is done online. So you apply online and interviews take place online, shortlisting and so on. If you're interested in applying for next year, if you like what you have heard today and you're interested in applying, entries are opening in October 2020 for next year. So there's the link. Please have a look and read through and decide if you have found a project or you think you have a project that would be worthy of sharing. So these are the categories. We have 7 categories, as I said. So best use of summative assessment, best use of formative assessment, there's a best research project, excellence in export, best transformational project, and innovation. And the final one, lifetime contribution, that one is by nomination rather than application, but all the others are by application. And if you click on that link of the full list of finalists, you'll see all of the finalists in each of those categories. And as I said, the winners will be announced next week online. So it's really worth having a look at that list of finalists, because there are some really interesting projects there. Yeah, we're going to hear from 3 of them now. So what have we got today? So we've got 2 finalists from the best use of summative assessment, and then we've got 1 finalist from the innovation category. So the first one we're going to hear from is the University of Reading for their student progress dashboard project, and Professor Emma Mayhew is going to talk us through their project. So I'm going to hand over now to Emma.
Hi Martha, thanks very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, perfect, wonderful. Well, as Martha said, I'm going to talk for just 10 minutes today about the student progress dashboard. And I'll show you what it looks like in a minute, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. The dashboard was developed as part of a really big electronic management of assessment programme that we were running at Reading from 2016 to January 2020, so it's just finished. The dashboard was one of the projects that we were working on within the programme. There was a number of different projects that we focused on. With the dashboard in particular, what we were thinking about was to delivering some kind of platform which would allow students to access their assessment data all in one place. We wanted to give them a little bit more information about their assessment data, and we also want to use some visuals to show them how they are doing. There are a few drivers for this. The first one was probably the main one. We really wanted students to better understand how they were doing in their assessment, and particularly to stop and think and be self-reflective about their performance, and if necessary, to change their assessment practices and change their assessment behaviours as a result of that self-reflective work. We also wanted more assessment data information to be more easily accessible to students from a kind of transparency point of view. And finally, we also wanted to give our staff involved in supporting students, both academic and professional staff, more granular, more detailed performance data about the students that they were talking to try to enhance the staff-student conversations that they were having. So we created this dashboard. Students can access it via their normal login to our student record system. We use SITS, created by Tribal. When they log in, they see this. So hopefully you can just about make out some of the detail of the slide I'm showing you. It's a little bit small. You'll be able to see just under the dark green bar 4 tabs along the top, a series of 4 tabs, and I'll run through these, but it's important to note at the start that the data that students are seeing about their assessment is just focused on their summative assessment data, and it's about the part they're currently in and the academic year they're currently in. So this is the main screen that they'll see when they log on to their dashboard, and I'll run through each of the graphics with you because you probably can't see the detail. If I start with this one up here, that's a little star I was trying to draw, didn't go so well. What you can see in the top left is an indication of how the student is doing so far in their academic year. The dashboard looks at all the work that the students have got back so far in their part and takes that into account, the value, the weighting of that piece, to give a running part average. Every time a student gets another piece of assessment in, this running part average will change until you get to the end of the year, when it will be reflective of the part mark. If we look at the top right-hand side here, you'll see a donut shape. that also takes into account the weighted value of each piece of assessment, but this time the graphic shows how much work has been finished and where the student has got the mark back, and how much work the student still has yet to go. So the dark blue that you might just be able to see is the marks that students have received, and the green is marks not yet received. The student is sort of a quarter of the way through receiving their marks for that particular part. At the bottom, you can see a bar chart. Let me just draw an arrow here. There we go. At the bottom, there's a bar chart. This shows students how they have done in their last few pieces of assessment. There's two things I want to highlight about this. The first is the colour coding. So you'll see against each of these different bars, which represent each different piece of assessment. You can see just about see the course code and the percentage value on the left-hand side there. So there's a colour coding going on. What we have put as an additional feature of this dashboard is a goal setting tool. So students can go to different parts of the dashboard and say what their target range for their marks, what the kind of target range is that they're looking for. So they might tell the dashboard, for example, that they'd like to score between 55 and 65, which is what that example is showing you there. That's completely optional goal setting feature, and they can also go back and change that target range to whatever they like whenever they want to do that. But if they do engage with that, the dashboard then colour codes their performance against this target range. So you can see that that range is coloured in green here, and you can see the key at the right hand side showing the colours which correspond to whether a student has achieved that goal, just fallen short, or in fact exceeded that goal. The other thing to highlight is that, of course, almost all students will receive more than 10 assessment marks. The graph at the bottom can show up to 10, but obviously they'll receive more than 10 assessment marks across all of their modules for their current part. We couldn't actually fit any more bars in to that little bottom bit of the dashboard. So what we did is we included a button at the bottom here, which you can click on, and you can toggle between that view that you can see there, so that graph view, and this view. So it will go to a table if you click on that button. You can click on it again and it will go back to the graph view. The table that you can see, instead of a graph, actually shows all the individual assessment marks due that year. So there's capacity to show far more, and then you can use the slide at the sides to go up and down. And what's really useful about this table is that you can actually order the assessment according to the headings. So for example, you can order according to the type of assessment. So you can see all your marks for your coursework and then all your marks for your exams, and you can compare the two, or you can order according to weighting or the mark. So that's a really useful feature in terms of that table. If we move on to the next tab along the top, so here we're looking at module marks. So we're focusing much more on modules than overall performance, which the last tab did. It shows users which module a student has enrolled in. So you can see each of these bars relates to a module. You can maybe just about see at the bottom here the module code, the credit value, and how many pieces of assessment have been completed for that particular module. So again, it's giving an indication to students how they're doing so far in that particular module, and it's again taking into account the weighting of each piece of assessment. And again, you can see that the chart is colour coded according to whether the student has exceeded, met, or fallen short of their goals. If I click on one of those bars, I can get a little bit more granular information. If I click on one of the columns, I can then see all of the individual pieces of work expected in this module. So for this module, there's 2 pieces of work listed on the side here. One piece has been finished and marked, and the other one is still outstanding. If I want even more information, I can click on that graphic again, and I end up going into a table which gives some basic information about the assessment type and weighting and status as well. So these are the main 2 dashboard tabs. The 3rd and 4th tabs at the top provide additional support and guidance to students. The first one focuses on supporting students to engage with their feedback and contains some links and videos as well. And the fourth tab over provides additional support as sources of pastoral and academic support for students, and it also gives them further information on the data that they can see so they can interpret it correctly, and a little bit more information about how we calculate marks. Okay, so we launched this dashboard to students in November 2019, so it's still very new. And as of today, we've recorded around 58,000 staff and student views. And as we expected, the vast majority of users are student users, and they're going on to the dashboard repeatedly. So we've probably got about 16,000 students. So going back and looking at the dashboard repeatedly, which is why we've got the 58,000 that's recording each time a student or staff member goes on. So yeah, the vast majority are student views, a smaller proportion being staff views. We obviously wanted to know much more about the student response to what we were showing them. So we surveyed them back in sort of December, January time. We got 218 responses to an online and paper-based survey at that time. And you can see from the results on the slide here on the right-hand side that the vast majority really liked the dashboard, 94% liked it, and felt more satisfied with their assessment experience. In terms of impact, 94% said it would help them self-reflect, and we wanted to know a little bit more about that kind of impact, how the dashboard, how that data is changing their behaviour. So we were really pleased to see that 95% of responders had said that they'd taken some form of action as a result. Most of them said that they were looking back and analysing patterns in their performance. Around 2/3 of students were saying that they were doing that, seeing how they were performing in different types of assessment, for example, or different types of modules. About half of the students, they could tick a number of boxes when we asked this question, about half the students also said that they were readjusting their goals and they were setting aside more time for assessment, having looked at the dashboard. But they also said that they would talk to their tutor. So around 1/3 of students said that they were going to talk to their tutor as a result of looking at the dashboard. And around 1/5 said that they were going to look for more academic or pastoral support, again, as a direct result. So really pleased to see that there was an impact on their behaviour. 53% said as a direct result of the dashboard they were going to go and look again at their feedback, having already read it. And then 62% said that they felt that they were likely to have much better tutorial conversations with their academic tutors about their performance because they've got this additional data that they can draw on. And just at the bottom, I thought it was interesting to note that out of all the different features of the dashboard, it was that initial graphic I talked about, that running part weighted average, that was the most popular piece of information. And for my last slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the feedback. Oh, I can't seem to be able to move on. There we go. Some of the feedback that we were getting from the students on the survey. We had some free text boxes for them to tell us how they felt about it. And there were some really clear themes developing from students, very much about the value of having all their data in one place, that they can see where they're heading in terms of their overall mark for the year, which just goes back to that idea that actually the most valuable feature is that running overall part mark. They also found the dashboard really useful in terms of thinking about how far away they are from their goals, and looking for areas where they could potentially improve. There was also a number of students that said that the dashboard was very motivating for them. A few of them said it actually reduced the stress levels. One of the students said that they were doing much better than they thought they were. A number of students said that actually the dashboard took away the need for them to do their own maths, because it's complicated, isn't it, to work out with a weighted value of an assessment how they're doing overall in their part, and they found it easy to navigate. There were some challenges. I think the biggest challenge that came up from the comments we were getting from students is about getting the marks that they have received in Blackboard quickly onto the dashboard. We have a process whereby the marks go once the students have received them back onto the student record system, onto the dashboard, and because we've got a level of integration, which one of the other projects we're working on in EMA, we've achieved a level of integration between Blackboard and SITS. So it's about getting the marks on quickly. It should be something like a 5 working day turnaround, but that hasn't always been met for various reasons. Sometimes it's a little bit slow to display different graphics that they can see, and there's a very strong desire to have more functionality on the dashboard. For example, they wanted previous years, they wanted to have a calculator tool so that they could predict what they're going to get next and see how that potentially might impact their overall average. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I think that might be my 10 minutes and hand you back to Martha.
Great, thank you very much, Emma. A really interesting project. It shows that the data doesn't lie. So there are a couple of quick questions, I think, if you can answer them, Emma. So the first one was about, sorry, I'm just scrolling up. Yes, where do you pull the data from? Does it come from the LMS or other sources too?
So the data comes from Blackboard. That's where students actually get their marks back. Then we, as I said, we've achieved a level of integration between Blackboard and SITS, our student record system. So the information, the data is pulled through every sort of 5 working days, it's pulled through regularly, but hopefully within 5 working days of the student actually receiving that mark back on Blackboard. So these are marks that students have got back already. It's just we're doing something with those marks above and beyond just listing them, showing them in a different way and in a graphical way.
And so how do they access their particular data? Where does it sit?
So when they get their essays back, or whatever assessment it is, they see that in Blackboard as normal, but a certain period of time later, that mark will be pulled through onto the dashboard. It will pull through onto our student record system and into the dashboard.
Great, thank you. And there was another interesting question. Sorry, there was another interesting question about whether there was any impact on academic performance. Sorry,
so that's a really,
yes, did the dashboard have any impact on the academic performance?
So that's a really good question, and I can't answer it yet because the dashboard only went live in November, and so students have been really using it from November up until now. So we haven't been able to do any work to see whether the dashboard and the kind of self-reflective and behavioural change aspects that the students have been reporting to us actually in the end has an impact on their academic performance and in their attainment. So that'll be another piece of work for us to do. It's very difficult though, isn't it, because so many things impact on students' performance, and of course we're in a very strange time at the moment where lots of different things that are completely out of our control will be impacting on attainment, but that's something that we're going to look at in a little bit more detail.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll move on to the next finalist in the summative assessment category. So we're now going to hear from Newcastle University of their digital exam service. So we're going to hear from Jack Ennis and Rebecca Gill. So I'll hand over to you two.
Thank you, Martha. Can I just check that people can hear me?
Yes, you can hear you.
Great, good stuff. Hi, okay, good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. So I'm Rebecca Gill, and you'll be hearing shortly from my colleague Jack Ennis as well. We thought we'd start by giving you a little bit of the context of the digital exam service that we run at Newcastle University. So the service aims to deliver high-stakes summative assessment, and we use institutional infrastructure, policies and procedures. We provide a reliable and secure online environment. So up to the current academic year, we've used our institutional virtual learning environment, Blackboard, the integrated test tool in the VLE, and we lock down exams using the Respondus lockdown browser software. We've also introduced from 2017-18, so 3 academic years ago, a pilot of Wiseflow digital exam software, which we've been using to explore new types of exam, digital exams, and also introduce bring your own device delivery. So the graph on the slide here shows the scale of our service. The first pilot exam took place in 2007 academic year, and up to 2018-19 we delivered approximately 140 digital exams through the service, which equates to approximately 10% of all the university exams. So it's a large scale service. It's used by every faculty across the institution, and it's used at all stages of talk programs. But that demand's really grown kind of organically, coming from module teams, program teams. It's not been a top-down kind of decision to move exams to digital. I should note, obviously, this graph doesn't show any figures for 2019-20, the current academic year. In semester 2, because of the current situation, we haven't run any face-to-face exams, so there have been a lot of alternative forms of assessment. So we know that that figure for this year, once we reach the end of the academic year, will be lower, and that's something that Jack's going to pick up on later in the session. In 2017-18 academic year, the university introduced the TEL strand of our education strategy, which includes the key objective shown on the slide here. So this initiated a project looking at aiming to expand the scale and diversify the range of assessment types that we can deliver through the digital exam service. We've been focusing particularly on digital written exams, which are offered alongside and in combination with the existing one that we had for automatically marked question types. And we've also explored whitelisting of online resources within a secure online exam environment, and introducing a broader range of system marked and short answer questions. I should also mention, here's a bit of kind of university terminology. By non-cluster environments, we mean moving it out of university computer clusters or labs, so that bring your own device aspect. So we now deliver the digital exam service provision through a combination of university owned PCs and also students using their own laptops. Our pilot, wide flow pilot phase, we've delivered over 20 digital exams using this new software we've been piloting. We did have an additional 12 planned when we were scaling up in semester 2 this year, but obviously that situation has changed somewhat. And this service is founded on close partnership of key stakeholders across the institution, as you can see from the honeycomb diagram there. So ourselves and the Learning and Teaching Development Service are obviously working closely. That's the school or subject area, the exams office and the IT service, but that's also founded on provision from our estate service to make sure we have suitable venues, and we work very closely with the student wellbeing service as well to ensure the accessibility of our exams to all of our students, and that's something I think Jack will pick up on next.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the digital exam service fits in the national context in which we operate. So in the spring of this year, JISC, who are a UK not-for-profit organisation providing digital solutions within UK higher education, published a report entitled The Future of Assessment. And in this, they highlighted 5 key principles and targets for the next 5 years that higher education institutions in the UK should aspire to relate to digital assessment. So they say that assessment should be authentic, that it should be preparing students for the workplace, testing knowledge and skills in a realistic and contextualised manner, that it's accessible, designed to be usable by everyone, including those with long-term disability, short-term injuries, or mental health challenges, appropriately automated, so providing quick, detailed, actionable feedback, whilst also easing the marking burden, that it's continuous, reflecting the need for students to be capable of lifelong and allowing assessment practice opportunities, and also secure. We need to ensure the right student is taking the right assessment, submitting their own work, and abiding by the rules. So digital exam service, and in particular, the movement of written essay exams to a digital format, enables us to address some of these key principles. For authentic assessment, typing is more likely in the workplace context than handwriting, as well as being the mode that students are more familiar with to prepare coursework assessments. Whitelisting allows access to specified web resources while maintaining exam security. And in the workplace, you would have access to information that you are required to interpret. This has the potential to enhance students' employability because we're assessing more authentic activities. In terms of accessible assessment, we're able to make tools such as spec available for students who need it on an individual basis. Students have the ability to edit their written answer, and there's no concerns about handwriting legibility. Students with a disability who in the past have been required to type their handwritten exams anyway are now getting the same experience as their peers in such exams. And those who require assistive technology can now use this in an exam using screen readers, speech recognition tools. And in the software that we've used, we're also able to apply extra time and rest breaks as appropriate. So automated marking speeds up the feedback process. The instant feedback delivered at key points gives students that ability to continually check their learning and understanding. And finally, our on-campus digital exams are secure. The lockdown browser ensures that only students registered for modules can access the exam, and they've got no access beyond the test or the permitted online resources. Rebecca is now going to talk a little bit about how students and colleagues feel about the service that we offer.
Thank you. So all of our students who took one of the pilot exams, either bring your own device and or a digital written exam, had the opportunity to complete an evaluation survey. As you can see, in terms of evaluation of digital written exams, over 50% of students reported that they preferred online to handwritten, and a further 25% of them are neutral. And the qualitative feedback is also very positive from the majority of students. They report fewer concerns about the validity of their work, and one of the things they're very encouraged about, very positive about, is the ease of editing as they're writing. So as the student quoted here notes, the process for them was more akin to what they would use when they're writing coursework or writing a longer piece of writing outside of exam conditions. Students with specific learning difficulties who have a requirement to type also appreciate the fact that they now have an equivalent experience to that of their peers. The evaluation of bring your own device, the bring your own device aspect was even more positive. There are a small number of students who were less satisfied, but that's usually been where there were technical issues, or in some cases if a student didn't come with their laptop fully prepared to the exam room. So to address this, of course, we know there will always be some unforeseen technical issues. We rely on troubleshooting functionality in the software, and we also have technical support specialists in the exam room to assist. Qualitative feedback gives an indication of the reasons for that high satisfaction. In particular, particularly for written exams, students really prefer to use a familiar machine, a keyboard that they're used to typing on. And also they reported that the noise level was much improved with bring your own device compared to the experience of taking a written exam in a university PC cluster. In addition to these benefits for the student experience, diversifying digital exam provision also has key pedagogic benefits, as our academic colleagues foreground here. So Charles Morissette in computing was our first module leader to pilot whitelisting, and this enabled him to set a more sophisticated type of assessment under secure exam conditions. Gabrielle talks about the practicalities and the marking side of things. So for her, digital written exams have helped her to address concerns about the reliability of assessment. And as Adrian Small points out, diversifying digital exam provision enabled him to include new assessment types, and that makes it possible to assess a broader range of skills and learning outcomes that might be possible compared to a traditional paper-based exam. So I'll hand you back to Jack.
So this is kind of final slide of where we are at now and what the opportunities and challenges that we face are. So our main challenge in terms of scaling up, which is what we want to do, they're mainly logistical challenges. So exam room technical support, we find that is required. So we need to upskill colleagues to do this. And we're also exploring the possibility of introducing digital exam technicians to complement the traditional invigilator role as we do scale up. And this is an issue for us because our exams run across a large number of smaller rooms, so we have to make sure that there's support available to each venue, maybe not in each venue, but at least available at short notice. We provide at the moment spare laptop provision for 5% of the exam room capacity on the day. Again, as we scale up, that requirement will grow. And how do we manage this? How do we get PC? How do we get laptop provision around the campus? And how do we schedule students in clusters when they don't have a device? Because that is something that we also do. If they inform us they don't have a device in advance, we can schedule them in a PC cluster, and that just adds to the complexity of the timetabling. And it just reiterates that close liaison that we had with our exams office who schedule the exams and our IT department who provide this technical know-how and software and the service about getting things around campus. Although we've talked about assistive software being available, but at the moment, actually, the two tools that we use for speech to text and the screen reader, they actually don't work in the lockdown browser that we've been using. So that's required us to create an additional version of an exam, so a non-lockdown version, which just adds again to that complexity. And again, as we scale up, we'll have more students who require that. So what we really need is the software to be able to use those tools that we already use. We know we have some exams that want to incorporate diagrams drawn on paper so that they can then be inserted into a digital answer. And that is possible, but it does require a hardware solution. So again, that's just a challenge of how we manage that. Do all students have a webcam on the device? Do we provide spare webcams for those students in the PC clusters? Not all our clusters have webcams, so we would have to provide it. And it's just managing those challenges about making sure everyone has the technical ability to take that exam at the right time. But there are opportunities, so there are demand for new types of exams, as Rebecca touched on. And I did see a question in the chat pop up about the authentic nature of exams, so the types of that you could lock down. And we, at the moment, it is web resources, but we do know that software providers are looking at whitelisting desktop applications as well. So as that is very much where we would like to go, and we know there is demand for that. So that would help us to increase the authenticity of digital exams as we go forward. And the main sort of immediate challenge, of course, is that, and this is a recent addition to the slide, is the COVID-19 response at the moment. So a few months ago, we had been seeking, and we are still seeking, a single system that will enable us to bring the exams that we have done traditionally in our VLE and the new ones in our pilot, so bring them together into a single system so it's a consistent experience for students and for staff. But obviously right now we're in a different set of circumstances. Rebecca already mentioned that in semester 2, we didn't have any face-to-face exams, so that graph is going to, the chart will go down. And moving into the next academic year, it's very likely that there will be far fewer face-to-face exams. So we have a different challenge, and that's how do we ensure secure assessment when students are taking their assessment on the large scale remotely. However, if we do have face-to-face exams, our experience where it's necessary, so some accrediting bodies might require that, our experience in bring your own device might be even more important. It might be cleaner, more secure to have students using their own device rather than sharing devices, and obviously more secure to not have lots of equipment being moved around campus, paperwork, things like that. So that might help in that regard. So just a final word, just to say that a few months ago, our path was very clear. We were going into this next academic year, we were scaling up, but right now the challenges are very different. So we're just going to have to look at the digital exam service and think about how we adapt to the new challenges. Thank you very much for listening.
Great, thank you very much, Jack and Rebecca. Really interesting project, quite established, but still lots of challenges and ambition built in. There were a couple of questions. One about the assessment platform that you're using.
So is the question, so which platform are we using?
Yes, sorry, yeah, which platform are you using?
So to date, we've used our institutional VLE, which is currently Blackboard until the end of July this academic year, when we'll move to Canvas. And alongside that, we've locked down with Respondus 4.0, Respondus lockdown browser software. But we've also been piloting for Bring Your Own Device, and for the digital written exams and the whitelisting functionality, we've been using WiseFlow. And we're looking at what software we'll use going forward now.
Will WiseFlow sit separate from the learning platform, or will they integrate?
So it will be a separate system is the intention, but we're looking for a link between the two, so students will just sign on once and data will be pulled across.
Okay, thank you. And another question coming about, do you find that the typing skills or speed might be a challenge for some students? Have you found that?
Yeah, that is something that we've been very careful about, and that's why we've started with quite a small scale pilot of digital written exams and gradually scaled up over those 3 years, and now looking to scale up further. In initial 2 years of the piloting, so 17, 18, 18, 19, we actually allowed students extra time for an online written portion of an exam compared to paper-based, but we've actually found from student feedback and from kind of from the staff perspective when evaluating their work as well, that hasn't really been needed. What we do have in place through our student wellbeing service is that while sort of traditionally for paper-based exams there might be students who have a disability who would need permission to type what would be a paper-based exam, we now have provision for the reverse of that, for if there are students who have a disability that might affect their typing speed and require to handwrite instead. So far we've only had, I think, one student who's needed that, but that's there for anybody who has a disability that specifically affects typing.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we'll now move on to our final finalist. So this one is in the innovation category, and we're going to hear from Dr. Anastasios Karakolidis, I hope I've pronounced it correctly, from the Centre for Assessment Research, Policy and Practice in Education in Ireland. So over to you, Anastasios.
Thanks, Martha. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, nice. So I'm going to talk about the use of animations in assessment. This is a project that has been conducted in collaboration with the Centre for Assessment Research, Policy and Practice in Education in Ireland, CARPE, and was also the main topic of my PhD thesis. So the reality is that the vast majority of tests in use today rely heavily on static text. This is assessments that they only use written text. And this can be problematic because text-based assessments are limited in terms of the complexity of what can be presented as both stimuli, but also as responses, as the response options. At the same time, text-based assessments require that test takers should have skills such as reading comprehension and interpretation skills that in many cases might be irrelevant to the construct that we're trying to measure. For example, let's say that we have a problem-solving assessment. This kind of assessments nowadays use a lot of written text to provide test takers with complex problems. We might have some test takers who fail the assessment, not because they lack the problem-solving skills we're measuring, but because they struggle with reading so much written text and they have difficulties interpreting and comprehending this text. So such groups might be test takers with poor language and reading skills, non-native speakers, people with dyslexia, and other groups. So this problem in the literature is identified as construct irrelevant variants because we have factors such as reading comprehension that are irrelevant to the construct we're trying to measure, and those factors impact test takers' performance. And of course, this is an important threat to validity. So for the purpose of this project, this innovation, we tried to explore the extent to which animated videos are a useful alternative to written text in testing and assessment. So we decided to work with animated videos because they allow us to replace much of written text. They allow us to visualize complex information that in many cases cannot be easily communicated through text. And at the same time, another alternative that we had was, instead of working with animated videos, could be to work with recorded videos with actual actors. But animated videos are more effective and efficient because once created, we can go back to them and make changes and improvement. We can pilot them again, so we can constantly improve them. While this is not the case with recorded videos that have actual actors, if there's something wrong there or there is a mistake or something that we want to change, we have to start the whole process again. That's why we decided to work with animation technology. Of course, two of the main challenges include the complexities in development and, of course, cost. So for the purposes of this project, we decided to work with a situational judgment test that was designed by Steven Stemler, Robert Serberg, and their colleagues are at Yale. And the test attempted to measure teachers' knowledge of how to deal with challenging social situations at school. So it tried to measure soft skills, interpersonal competencies. So taking this situational judgment test, we worked with an animation company and we created 15 animated videos based on the original text-based assessments. So this is a sample of the original text-based scenario. As you can see in situational judgment test, we start with a vignette, a scenario that presents a complex situation, and then we ask test takers to report how they would approach this situation, how they would resolve this situation. So what we did was to replace this text-based vignette with animated videos. And this is how the final assessment looked like. So instead of having test takers to read the text-based scenarios, they had to watch a video, and then they were able to give their responses, and at any point they were able to go back and watch the video again and again. Of course, this was a time-consuming process. It was really challenging to develop these animated scenarios, and it included many phases because we had to take into account many issues. We had to make sure that we have a contemporary teaching environment, that we have diversity, and all those issues. So it was a process like a trial and error process where we had to develop multiple versions of each scenario to end up with a scenario, an animated video that we are happy with. And this is just an example of the different steps that we followed until we end up with a good scenario, a good animated environment. So of course, we decided to pilot and do a research project to actually examine whether the use of animated videos makes a difference. So we conducted an experimental study and compared the animated to the text-based version of the same test. And we had a sample of 51 native and 78 non-native English speakers. And we randomly assign them to take either the animated or the text-based version of the same test. We measured their performance on the test, and we also measured some other construct irrelevant factors, such as their English proficiency and their reading comprehension ability in English. And the aim was to find out whether actually those construct irrelevant factors are related to their performance. And that was our first research question. What impact does the use of animated videos have on construct irrelevant variance attributed to language and reading skills? And the results showed that the variance that was attributed to construct irrelevant factors was reduced by 9.5%. So in other words, by using animated videos, we managed to reduce the dependency of test performance on irrelevant factors, such as participants' proficiency in English and reading comprehension. And another aspect of this study was to examine test takers' reactions and perceptions of the test. So again, the results showed us that participants who completed the animated version of the test found it to be more valid and fairer indicator of their performance. The animated test was perceived as more enjoyable, and also it was found to use language that was less difficult to understand. So what? One of the main questions here is, did animation make a substantial difference? So in terms of the quality and the validity of the evidence that it provides, we found that the animated version of the test provided results that were at least 10% less dependent on constructive relevant factors. So we can say that we managed to reduce the noise in our test results. At the same time, we managed to show that with the use of this kind of technology, test takers' perceptions towards the test are improved. And this is important because their perceptions can affect their attitudes towards the body organizing the assessment. They can affect their engagement with the assessment or even their performance. Now, whether or not it is worth the effort and the money to make such an investment and work with animated videos in assessment, that clearly depends on, first of all, the aim of our assessment and how large our assessment is going to be. For example, if we are going to administer a test to a group of test takers with low levels of education, with like a lot of non-native speakers, then probably the use of animations is going to help those people demonstrate their abilities and perform well on the test. While if we're talking about assessments that are going to be administered to native English speakers with excellent English, then probably this is not an investment that it's going to be provide good value for money. So in terms of the potential contributions of this innovation, apart from improving equity and fairness, as test takers felt that it did, and based on our results, that was the case as well, we also found out that this technology further standardized the assessment. That was the case because in contrast to the text-based version of the test, the animated videos left less room for misinterpretation. So instead of asking test takers to imagine the scenario and create an environment, create the characters in their head, in their mind, this is what the animations did for them. We gave all those informations to them so as to avoid misinterpretations. And of course, it would be interesting to see how different population groups react to this kind of technology, because as I mentioned, we worked with teachers. So this is a group that we wouldn't necessarily expect to have difficulties with language. So it would be interesting to see how groups with low levels of education react to this technology, and also to see whether this technology can be used for other purposes, like for formative assessment purposes, for professional development. We thought that it provide lots of opportunities, and if it's developed carefully and designed in really evidence-based way, it provides a great opportunity. So this is it. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting, innovative project. There was one question that came up earlier on about whether the animations had subtitles or transcripts, perhaps.
That's a really good question, and no, we had a dilemma whether we should include subtitles or not, but for the purposes of the project, we decided not to do it, because we just wanted to see what animations can contribute. So
Okay.
we decided to minimize the use of written text to have a clean research evidence in favor of or against the use of animations. But later on, probably if someone wants to end up using this kind of technology, it might not be a bad idea to use subtitles. So it doesn't mean that we're against that approach. We just decided to, for the purpose of the research project, to keep it clean and get rid of as much text as possible.
Sure. I guess it would improve accessibility as well if you provided transcript or subtitles, but yes, for future development perhaps.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the sectors that this would work well in, but could it be applied across different sectors? There was some chat about would it work well at the university level? You've talked about lower levels of education or second language learners. Could it be applied across all sectors?
I think so. I think that this is technology that can be used in many different contexts. And the original idea started with groups with low levels of education. For convenience reasons, to be honest, we did this research using pre-service teachers because we are based in the Institute of Education, and for us it was really hard to access populations with low levels of education to develop an assessment for those groups. That's why we decided to do it with pre-service teachers. But absolutely, I think that it's valuable for adults with low levels of education, non-native speakers with limited proficiency in the language of the test, or even kids with learning all language difficulties.
Yes.
But further research, of course, is required to support that.
Sure. And one final question about were the tests time constrained? So if the animation can be replayed a number of times, this would have time burden. Was that investigated, looked into?
For the purpose of the trial, no, the tests weren't time constrained. But we decided that we should let people replay the animation as many times they want, because this is what someone can do with a text-based assessment as well. They are not restricted in terms of how many times they can read the piece of text. But in the end, someone can put time constraints in terms of, like, you can allow, for example, 1 minute per question. This is something that we didn't do for the purpose of the research, but it would make sense to do it in a real assessment context.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha.
I think we'll finish the 3 individual presentations section now, but if there are any outstanding questions that anybody has for any of the finalists, if you want to put them in the chat window, and I can field those with the finalists. And while you're doing that, I will just run through the final slide that I said that I was going to go through. So thank you very much for listening. This is the information that I was talking about at the front of the session. So if you are interested in joining the eAssessment Association, or you're not a member already, please go on to this web link and register. It's free and it's very easy, so please do that. It'll take you 30 seconds. Please also join our eAssessment Association LinkedIn group and add to the discussion. Follow us on Twitter, there's the handle. And spread the word about the 2021 awards program, or please look at the website to see if you're interested in applying, and all the categories and the criteria for applying are there. And also get in touch. We want to hear from you. If you have any thoughts, blog posts, case studies that you would like to share and use, please email our marketing manager, because we'd love to hear from you. So if anybody has any final questions, I think we can take them now, or if any of the finalists would like to add anything further. Deathly silence. Any of the finalists?
Can I just butt in and say that the eAssessment Association has been really good. I've been a member for many years as an individual. It's free, so get on it, folks. Obviously, they're all members of Transforming Assessment now. If you also, when you're signed up to the Transforming Assessment site, if you manage to tick the box that says newsletter updates, then you'll get our future sessions as well. I've just posted in a feedback survey link that's applicable to this particular session, and that will be feedback that I'll try and give to I will forward on to the presenters. But of course, bear in mind that that feedback survey was traditionally designed for a single presenter style session. So if you're going to make a comment about a particular presenter, if you could just pop their name or their session or into their feedback, so we can give them the right piece of feedback. But thanks very much for joining, everybody. I'm just going to move the slide on by one, because yes, you can @TransformAssessUs on Twitter. And our next session is a joint session with the Assessment and Higher Education Conference group. That's a group in the UK. And as the COVID-19 has hit, as hitting all of us, they had to cancel their face-to-face conference. So what we're doing is a preview session for the new combined 2021 conference. So that's on the 15th of July. We haven't quite got all the speakers lined up yet, but we hope to do that by perhaps the end of this week. So the next session for Transforming Assessment is Assessment in Higher Education Conference Preview for 2021 on the 15th of July. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming. Great to see an active discussion being involved here, and see you all next week. Not next week, next month. Okay, it looks like questions are done, so I'm going to stop the recording.